Recording in
Hey, I guess we're starting now. I'm under strict instructions because we have some city staff that can only stay for so long tonight to participate in the meeting tonight. So I want to make sure we get through the items while they're still able to attend. This is the Neighborhood District 4 meeting. My name is Eric Chase. I'm the vice chair for this district. Our chair is out of town this week, as are several of our other members of the board. We have a few here. If you're a board member, could you raise your, I only see Mel here. Oh, and I see our BYU representative in the back. I know there are several, including the Pleasant View area, Pleasant View neighborhood representative Lynn Sorensen is joining us on the Zoom tonight. Okay, I want to just give a few reminders. So we're going to go right into this planning item first, but I wanted to let people know what the process is for this. So this item of the zone change number 1 in the Pleasant View neighborhood is on the agenda because the developer has requested a zone change. And so part of the process of whether that happens or not is coming to this neighborhood meeting. This is the forum where the neighborhood can really interact with the property owner, the developer, and have questions and get them answered. Because the next steps in the process are a little bit, they go to the planning commission and then along to the city council. So there's not as much back and forth that is allowed in those meetings as there is tonight in this neighborhood meeting. So we have the developer here to give a presentation and to answer some questions afterwards. If for the presenters and for the people who are talking tonight, make sure you talk into one of the microphones. We have a few up here, both for the benefit of the people in the room, but especially for the people joining us online. At the end of their presentation, we'll take an opinion poll, and that information will be passed along to the planning commission and the city council, because they're the people who actually decide. So I'd also, if you're just maybe have already made up your mind on this project, we do have some public comment period at the end of the meeting, but we want to save what time we have for people to give feedback and get feedback from the developer, and we can include that additional public comment at the end of the meeting. So let's move on to item 1, and I think we have the developer here. Is that you guys? Okay, would you want to come on up and introduce yourselves?
Hello, and I'm glad to see you all here.
Right
up. You cannot hear me loud enough?
Yeah, that's right there.
Usually I get heard more than I care to. So if you can't hear, reach out. I'm Rob Reynolds, and I've been in this business a lot of years. And some of the most notable projects here in Orem that we have done the development on is associated. One of them is the Provo City Temple. We're the ones that came in and took all the dirt down when all the piers ran all the way down. And I remember telling my guys, whatever you do not hit one of those piers. Thank goodness we didn't. And so all that dirt that was removed from the Provo City Temple when it was on those piers, that was what we did, as well as other notable projects, the Joseph F. Smith building on BYU. We did the Brigham Young Arch Museum, which has been there a few years now. My company, the earthwork side of it's doing the Salt Lake Temple and has been doing it the last number of years. So the site side of this project is something that is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. And as I look at the site, what we're proposing is to basically remove a hillside that I personally don't like to begin with, but everybody has their passions, and put a building in its place there. So what we're after tonight, frankly, is a zone change, but let's start with one more slide. This shows you the location of the site there. This is a bigger highlighted picture of the site itself. And if we'd go to the next slide, please. That is pointing to this site as it's highlighted. If you look at the elevation of the site, as other pictures will be showing you, you'll see the elevation of, we're basically trying to go in and bring this down to the grade or close to the grade on both sides, eliminating these steep slopes, and also keeping a zone for multifamily, which are all around it, compared to the residential behind, creating a separation between residential and the multifamily, which exists along North Canyon. The back line of the property butts up roughly here. But we gotta, to get the elevation right, we slope at a 2-to-1. So we're about another 100 plus feet away from that property line. So there's roughly 100-foot separation from where our building will stop, roughly, to where that goes. Yes.
2-to-1.
Yes.
Since we don't have a microphone.
Oh, he asked what a 2-to-1 is. 2-to-1 is you drop down a foot for every 2 feet you go out. No. 2-to-1 is roughly, what is it? 45. Yeah.
That's pretty steep.
It's more like,
Well, it's
more like 30.
it's
Because 45 would
2 to
be
1.
1-to-1.
And when you talk about the grades that are existing there are steeper than what we're proposing. So the existing grades you're looking at, we're going to moderate from what they'd be more moderate than what you see on the existing site. Yes. Yes. Oh, I got to remember to do that. The question was asked if we're going to be removing the houses. Yes, there's 2 houses on the site, this red one and this white one. And they would be removed in the process. Yes. Yes.
What is the hill composition made of? Is it a natural hill made, or is it geologically surveyed? Is it rock? Is it, what is
Sand and gravel. Oh, you want to know what the disposition of the material on the hillside? According to the soils engineers, it's basically sand and gravel. Down deeper than we're going to go.
Which is how deep are you going to go?
We're going in at
Top of the hill down.
You're roughly 50 feet from where this is to where this is. Yes. Here, that may be easier rather than me trying to remember to repeat it, huh?
Our property is right on your east property line, and looking at these drawings that were sent out,
So
that is not a 1-to-1.
no.
We are right on your east property line of your project. Our house
Is which one?
right in the
This
middle,
one right here
the one with the orange roof, that
Okay.
one right there.
with the big pine tree?
Yes.
Okay.
And that the top of that pine tree is roughly the elevation of the top of your building, which is totally unacceptable.
Well, the top of our building, and I'll have the architect explain that. And you gotta understand, we're coming after a zone change. The project we're putting up is a preliminary design of what we're playing with. We've still got to work, as he mentioned before me, with city councils and all the other perspectives. Why would you fight a zone change for something?
Future stuff. Go ahead.
Well, let's go to the next
Yeah.
page, if we would, or 2-page. One more. That's well, if you want to see the hill again, maybe back up that one. But if you look at the elevation of where these sit and what we're proposing, this back house, I think, is 9 feet taller than our whole project. That white house you're referring, or somebody asked earlier, is 9 feet taller in elevation than our whole project. So are we going to be shorter in elevation to what's on site? Yes. So I don't know, when you say we're going to be higher than your pine tree, I don't know how we can, unless we're gonna shrink the pine tree. But nevertheless, this shows you the elevation of the hillside that sits that we would bring more down to the existing grade. The zoning question, which is the next slide, if you would, please. That shows you both the current zoning. This is the current zoning, R18. If I were to come up on this grade, I'm allowed to go 35 feet high. Obviously, our proposed project is way less than the elevation this would be on top of that hill. So what we're proposing is less obtrusive as to elevation by removing the dirt than by leaving it there. The proposed zone, all this is multifamily from here all the way there. The zone proposing is consistent with everything around it, excepting the residential that goes behind it, which was mentioned. And that's one reason why removing the dirt creates a physical as well as a natural barrier between the residential and the multifamily. Yes.
What does the removal of the dirt, what consequences will that have? What consequences will the dirt removal have on the neighborhood?
It shouldn't, I mean, mentioning the previous projects that I mentioned, this will be way less obtrusive than any of those. One question was asked to me is beforehand, which I'll answer now, is the dirt that is going to be removed from the site is basically coming out and going south in front of the stadium till it hits University Ave to I-15 and gone. So the neighborhood shouldn't be affected at all. And as far as the slope grade of the remaining hill, should be a betterment to you than what is currently existed on the site. I've lived my life in the dirt. That's one thing. Yes.
You keep mentioning the east side being R18 and that your property borders maybe just on the south side, multifamily, but both the north side, which I own property in, up in the yellow
That's
zone,
multifamily.
and that's R18.
No, where are you?
So that yellow zone there,
That's not
Okay.
R1. That's
it's
that's
not, but it's not
apartments.
it's not,
It's
apartment.
multifamily.
it's single family zoning. No, the yellow zone?
That can't be.
Are you sure?
We have pictures of it. It could be condos, apartments,
They're townhomes,
but they're referred to as a multifamily. There's more than one family in a unit. So the buildings aren't put together.
There's more than one building on the lot as
Okay.
well.
Gardenville condominiums, our occupancy rules are one family per unit.
I know, but several units per property. Which is referred to as there's multiple families on most linked places on the site. So all that is referred to, as I look at, as a multifamily all the way across. There's not one home on a single lot by itself. So therefore, I mean, then if it's R2, there'd be two homes on a single lot. Multifamily is several.
I've got a real basic question.
Sure.
What's your understanding of why a city like Provo?
Oh.
Right there.
Oh, you,
Here. Nobody can hear that. My basic question for you is, why does a city like Provo have zoning ordinances? Could you explain your view of why Provo has zoning ordinances, has a zoning committee, commission, or whatever it is? What's your understanding of that?
well, when you say that, the growth and development go through spurts. If you look back 30 years, the needs of Provo City is different than today. And so how often they master plan these cities, that's a better question for the city to ask, because every so often they redo the master plan of the city. Whether they interject less industrial or more industrial, whether they inject more multifamily, that is the growth of a city kind of dictates the master plan and amendments.
Who decides if it's good for the city, the change of zone? Who decides if it's good for the city and the homeowners
Well,
around it?
I think there's several, you're asking a plethora of answers to that one. Some of it is oftentimes people who own their ground have certain rights to their ground, just like you do. Always.
Look,
Always.
we have a real limited time, so I want to keep it less philosophical and more.
Agenda.
Okay.
Agenda is, that's his plan, and then we open it up for questions.
Thank you.
Your questions might be answered if you let him finish his talk.
All right. Thank you. And I apologize if I'm, we asked me questions outside my expertise, but thank you. Let's go to the next slide if we would, please. That basically shows the existing. The next one after that, that doesn't do much for us. And I don't know, that shows you some of what we're preliminary proposing in lieu of the dirt, an interjection of a building. Then I think if we go to the next slide, I can't remember where we at next, and one more after that. That doesn't get me where I was thinking either. One more, if I may, please. These are just different proposed. If you look at this top one, you'll see that we've kind of imposed the building on the site itself. And then if you go to the last slide that there's that. Another. One more. There we are. Here's the elevations that you were asked beforehand, or somebody did. Here's the elevation of the existing two houses. If you took the elevation of that over the project, it's taller than what the project will be of the existing house on there. Obviously, I'm after to develop something, and this is a preliminary project. The project permit, the zoning is something that we're after to get to where we can move forward with the development phase so that we can further answer questions, we can further refine, or whether we need to soften something, or whether we need to do something to where this is not a project I'm looking to hurry and build and run from. It's a project that I'm looking to retain for a long period of time. It's not something, and so do I want it conducive to the neighborhood and being successful? Absolutely, I do. Do I want it to be a beautiful building and a property? Absolutely. That's both for my gain and to everybody's in this room's gain, is to have a pleasant and a nice property to look at. Because of that, I've also invited the architect that drafted this to join me so that we could also hear some of you could get some questions or feedback. So as we design, like I say, we're after the zoning, but the next thing that's important to me is taking the rough designs that we have and designing it to where it's a win-win is what we're trying to make for the neighborhood. I'm not trying to play any games. I'm not trying to do anything. But anyway, so like I say, I invited Chris to be with me, who's from Think Architecture. He's done more of these than I can probably mention. But that being said and then following his few comments, we will, I guess, open it up to questions that hopefully we can field and answer. Chris?
Good evening, and thank you for being here. And Rob, thanks for that introduction. Maybe I want to just kind of dive back. I mean, I know there's been a lot of discussion and questions, but the process of this project is, number one, is to start with the process that every process goes through with the city. When you go through a project like, number one is we have to go through a zone change. So we make an application for the zone change. A zone change is the process of changing it from an R1 to the CM zone. There's requirements for each zone, and I hope you all understand that the city has a zoning ordinance, and there's codes and requirements for each zone, whether it's a single family home, whether it's a duplex, whether it's townhomes, whether it's a multifamily project like this. They have requirements for a building to meet certain requirements for that zone. So this project, for example, being under the campus mixed use, has certain requirements. The requirements of setback from canyon from the road. It has requirements for parking, that there's enough parking in this. It requires elements for bike parking. It requires elements for amenities. Each of these are requirements that are part of that zone. What we're showing today is an element of what is potentially capable to be on this site. Is this the final project? Absolutely not. I can tell you that right now. It will not be the absolute final project because of the fact that what we're doing is trying to help present that the idea is to remove all of this dirt coming off the back, as Rob had mentioned, the ability to come in to cut this down. And this may change a little bit through the design when we go through the final design under the CM zone. We have to look at that component, and there's requirements to it. So the idea is, will you comply with the CM zone? We actually need to. And so our point here was to kind of show what is capable, what is allowed, but we still have that process to go through. Can I go back a couple of slides, please? Back maybe 3 or 4 slides. Couple more. One more. Let's see here. I want to get back to where we just see the property. This is good. Yeah, right here. No, one more back. So when we get into the zone, one of the things that we look at is the surrounding zones. And of course, to help everybody understand, the process of a zone is a recommendation, because a zone change is and correct me, I mean, I've done this with other cities, but a zone change is a legislative change, which means the city council will be the final determination to approve this zone. Planning commission recommends that zone change to the city council, and then the city council will go through and do that. Under this zone change here that's proposed, there is those rules that we have to meet. Once that is approved, then we will start another site plan process, another design process that we will start now reworking all of these components to meet this zone. And that could be setbacks. We've tried to design to the setbacks. We've tried to design to the allowable heights, but there may be give and takes to those heights on what we need to do. One of the things this zone does is it really pulls the building forward right up on the very front. It makes us be 20 feet from Canyon Road. That seems really close when you'd like to see it maybe pushed back in there. Because if you go to the next slide, please. It might be 2 slides. One more, please. When you start looking at it and you see this hillside up here, and you see where the project would be, the zone that is being proposed, and that's really one of the best zone that's around here, because the neighboring property to the south between the stadium and this property is all the same zone. It requires that it's right up on Canyon Road, that it becomes engaging with the street. That's what this zone requires. And so therefore, when you start looking at, we've kind of started to ghost in this building, you can start seeing how it's really pulling forward up on Canyon Road. Our first design had it back a little bit farther, but as we started to look at the zone, that's required to do so. The other thing we've looked at is potentially starting to reduce some heights and maybe staggering this down the hill a little bit to make it not so prominent in the front. So, there's a lot of things that go on here, and I know that our time is short, and so I'm going to wrap this up. This building here is a concept, and I want you to all remember that it's a concept. We still have the final design to finish once the rezone is done. So the idea is it capable is it the best use for this property to have a rezone? Absolutely. I think it is, to engage with all of the other things that are there. And we hope that you would feel that something needs to happen on this property, and that a rezone is capable, understanding that we still have a building to design that may be something different than what you're seeing here, because we still have to comply with that zone. If this is not the CM zone and we go to another zone, it would have different parameters, and we would have to design to that parameter as well. So
Well, thank you.
Why does something need to happen at this time?
Thank you for this. We have a few,
we'll hold on to that for a
we
minute.
have probably about 10 minutes
Okay.
left we can spend on this to get some back and forth questions for the applicants.
This gentleman right here had a question.
Yeah, just go ahead.
So the question was, why does something have to happen on this property?
Just quoting you, why does it have to happen after 70 years of being just fine? Why does it have to happen to you?
Well, for me, I'm not the owner, that would be Rob, but every,
You're the owner.
he,
You
yeah,
guys own the property.
yeah.
So Devin sold to you. Absolutely. Okay, see that, we were waiting to hear what happened, how this terrible thing occurred. Now we know.
I thought that was when I addressed the owner of the property. So
You said you were the owner.
no, I'm actually the owner. I purchased it from Devin and,
All right, now we know.
okay. Yes. Oh, either.
I'm just concerned because I don't think this is what Provo needs right now. We've got a lot of big buildings like this for students. And what we don't have is starter homes for people. And if you've listened to the governor's concern about that, is that people aren't going to be able to live here. Young families aren't going to be able to live here because there just isn't housing, because all the developers come in and either make big fancy houses or they make great big apartment houses so that they don't have a chance to have a buy into a kind of a home that they can build some equity to build on in their lives.
And to answer that question, the challenge that I sit in, whether it's for entry-level homes or multifamily or larger single-family homes, comes down to economics and location. Seems like the less the ground costs, the more opportunities you have to put affordable housing on them. As the ground values increase, density, other things likewise have to follow that suit. Otherwise, they can't make fiscal sense.
What does the city need? And we don't need more of these great big buildings.
Well, and that's studies show that we do. Studies show. Okay, I mean, okay, next question.
I just want, is this student housing? Is this
That
what
is the
we
plan,
call it?
yes.
This is student housing.
That is
So
the plan.
for young people to an apartment, something like that. Is that
Along those lines, yes.
with all the cars that go with it? If you drive down 6 North in Provo, you see, you can barely drive through there and that's lined with these kinds of developments. So is that what you're gonna have here?
No, the desire, obviously, that's why we're trying to meet and exceed parking requirements for this zone so that we don't cultivate an additional problem with parking. We're trying to enhance.
Yeah. So, you know, we have over 450 stalls in a garage under this building so we do not park on the street. That was one of the things that we really wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Yes,
No matter what you do, if you get a zoning change, you are planning to remove the dirt.
yes,
You are planning to remove the hill.
yes.
My question is, how long are you planning that process would take? Because I don't know if you've been there, but even with the hill there blocking, we hear everything that happens at the stadium. We hear everything that happens anywhere around there. It echoes through our place. So we will be living with your dirt removal for however long it takes.
The dirt removal is planned to take somewhere around 3 months. Well, I would hope not. I've been in the dirt work my whole life but as a rough rule of thumb, it takes about 3 months to remove the dirt. Yes.
Okay, so these are some kind of very specific zoning questions. So to go to campus mixed use, and I realize you're not the one that dictates what's in zone, but just to kind of help us understand what you understand, what is the maximum number of units that a zone like that could have? Number one. Number two, what is the maximum height that it can be? And number three, what is the parking requirements per resident or what does the zone dictate? The reason I ask the question is because at some point, the zoning gets changed, and let's say you get hit by a bus or something, someone else comes in, we want to, I'm curious to know, what are the maximum parameters that are there?
I'm going to go backwards on your questions. Parking, it's from my understanding, it's based on the bedroom size within the unit. And if the bedroom is a certain size, it's one car stall per bedroom. If the bedroom is greater than like 200 square feet, where you could have two people in a bedroom shared, which we are not doing, we're not proposing that, it would be 2 stalls per bedroom. But then it also has a quarter stall per every 4 for guests on top of that. So it's covering a stall per bedroom plus an additional quarter stall per bedroom, or one stall per unit. So that's number one. Number two, our height, the height is, the maximum height in this zone is 75 feet from the lowest grade point. So understanding that down off Canyon Road, which happens to be the lowest grade point, it's 75 feet to the highest point on the roof. Remember Rob saying that we were over 55 feet from Canyon Road to where the top of that grade is now with dirt. Plus there's 27 feet of that house. So right now you're over 6 feet to the peak of that roof from Canyon Road. The maximum we can be is 75. Okay. As far as the number of units, of course, the number of units will always be based upon the ability to park that project. I mean, like I was telling earlier, we have over 450 stalls. That generates about a 400 residential, that puts about 100 units within this development. Could I go more? Well, there's also that budget constraints of how fast, how many parking stalls can I build, and what's the cost to build them to the number of units and within the height limit. So it's all a balancing of units to parking ability, but that is the number of stalls that are required.
Okay, we have a comment online. Shalana, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my daughter was looking for apartments this August, and she had just ample opportunities. There were so many options that she had that I have a hard time believing that your studies show that we need more student housing, when my daughter had a fine time getting them. I saw a ton of for rent signs. My nephew had the same thing. I'm not seeing what you're saying, that we desperately need these student housing.
All I can say is the study is probably more global than a macro study compared to one experience that your daughter or son-in-law or whoever may have had. I also have a son living in one of the places here, and there was a waiting list and certain things for him to get in. So I know that it may vary from place to place, but all I could do, I guess, is share the study as time goes on. So, but it's also known that apartments or multifamily are in a shortage because there's more people coming to Utah than leaving. But I don't know if that answered your question, but
I think we have time for probably like 2 more questions before we have some other agenda items to go to.
Is this on? Okay, so both of you said repeatedly that, hey, if you have concerns about the project as it looks in these renderings, don't worry, we just need a zoning change now, and then we can refine it later. But the thing is that after a zoning change, as far as I understand, you essentially have no legal reason beyond that zoning change to listen to the public. That after that, If the city says, oh, we don't want to grant a permit for this particular the way you've designed this project, that you could then just tell the city, oh, that's prohibited by the takings clause. You need to give us this permit to develop. This is in line with the zoning. So essentially, the zoning is the primary backstop here. This is the thing that the city has to, if people want to preserve the character of the neighborhood, the zoning is the primary utility that we have for having that kind of determination in our city planning, and having feedback to a developer that the developer may or may not listen to is a very different kind of thing after you've got the changes that you want from the legislative process.
Great question. Thank you. Let me address it. The zone change is the process of the first stage of going through the design. We need to understand, we need to know that we can receive the zone change. Then under that zone that we're asking for, there is an entire list of requirements that have to be done. And when we go to that zone change and start that list, we then have a site plan approval process that we have to go through planning commission, and we have to go through all the staff approvals. And there is parameters of height, use, setbacks, grades, landscape requirements, height, rooftop, if there's rooftop amenities, which we don't have.
The same requirements that all the south just have, that you have no particular, like as long as you meet the requirements that are the same for the entire zone.
That's correct.
That you no longer have any particular reason to listen to any other design feedback from the public, except just as a public relations move. That you have no legal reason once you get the zoning change you want to, because if you have people say, oh, we'd like to have these kinds of changes to our design, but they're within the restrictions of the general campus mixed use, like the big, huge apartments south of campus are, that then if the city said, we would rather not give you a permit based on your design, we'd like you to make these changes that the public has requested, as long as they're within the limits of the campus mixed use zone, if you've gotten the zone change you want, at that point, you could just say to the city, too bad, you try to not give us the permit, we're going to take you to court over takings clause.
If I follow your logic and ration.
Down our throats. Yeah. Like they did with Tip Top. Yeah.
Yep. And the state. And a few other. We got the zoning commission.
But yeah, but on the other side of that scenario, you talk about the stadium. Yes, I'm sure it has some noise things, but isn't it a great amenity? Isn't it a great thing for everybody around?
It's a lot of noise.
Yeah, only 5 or 6 times a year, or whatever they might have.
Rachel, did you have something?
But bottom line is sure.
Okay.
He's our city council.
Great.
Yeah, Councilor Hoban.
Hey, all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just gonna, inform the people in the audience that, in general, you do have the ability, before the city council grants a zone change, they can require, or the developer can offer up a development agreement that essentially says, okay, I will only build this many units, it will only be this high. And so we do have the ability to kind of hold the developer to a certain outcome before we grant the zone change, and ensure that whatever the intent is with the zone change, that actually happens. So I wouldn't worry so much about that. What I would worry about in general is, do you want a large basically apartment complex? That should be the main consideration here, is do you want that or not? And then your feedback should be based on that, as opposed to getting in the nuances of how tall or whatever. I mean, just in general, big picture. you want a big apartment complex there? And I would focus on that. The city council can, of course, then take that into consideration and make sure that whatever is developed is a good development. But I would focus my feedback more on, you know, do you want the big apartment complex or not? Keep in mind that the developer is not obligated to build anything. So if a big apartment complex is denied, he can, of course, sell the property to someone else or not develop anything at all. So, yeah, I think the big question is, do you want the big apartment complex or not? I will state my personal opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of the council. My personal opinion is, and I think the governor would agree and such, that we need owner-occupied homes more than we need rental. So whether that means, you know, we build condos instead of apartments and they can be owned and occupied by, you know, they can be owned and people can gain equity and such, or whether, you know, this property would be better suited for twin homes or townhomes or something else. I just think that we need to focus on owner occupied as opposed to more rental. There's many reasons for that. One, we've got a housing crisis, as they call it, and two, the Provo is significantly impacted by numbers on paper. So meaning when retailers look at coming to Provo, they say, oh, your average income is so low, we can't sustain a cheesecake factory here, but Orem can. Or you know, other retail establishments will look at things like that as well. So there are other considerations in regards to, you know, why we would want more owner occupied or single family and such, in addition to just, you know, parking and things like that. There are some practical reasons why we might want to consider other housing types in addition to the housing crisis. Anyways, that's just some additional information that might be useful.
Okay,
Okay, we're just real quick. The Pleasant View representative, Lynn Sorensen, wants to say something. And then did you want to go to a opinion poll or
We have one
more?
person.
one more
Okay, so let's have
comment.
Lynn
Let's have
speak
Lynn
really
talk.
quick, and then the one more comment. Is Lynn ready to talk? Okay.
I'm Lynn Sorensen, and I'm the Pleasant View representative to District 4. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Lynn.
So I thank Councilman Travis for speaking and
You keep breaking up, Lynn.
Could we have the other comment?
Yeah,
other question
just
back here.
Following up on the comment a few minutes ago about there being ample housing. My understanding is that for BYU, their enrollments have been pretty flat the last several years, and that's the plan for the foreseeable future.
They have capped enrollment.
Yeah.
They're at max.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that online comment that there's not, I don't think I think there's plenty of housing already for students. That's been my experience as a student, and from what I know from other students, I think there's plenty. So
thank you, everybody. I know there's everybody. I see lots of people with papers and pages of comments and stuff. We don't have.
We've been given enough time. It feels
Okay.
rushed. This is important to us. We haven't been given enough time. I want to go on record, and I invite a vote. How many think we need?
Okay, this is not a decision-making body.
Well,
If you're
recommendation,
all we're doing,
haven't been given enough time.
well, so we have 2 email addresses for the planning commission and for the city council, because ultimately they're the decision makers on this. If you there's some paper copies of the agenda in the back that have both these emails on there. There's the online version. It's kind of hard to read up here, but thank you guys for coming, first of all. Okay. So the two emails here are council@provo.org and this other one, dspublichearings@provo.org. That's for the Planning Commission. And I know that's unsatisfying to some of you, but that's how this process works. Yeah, so let's do an opinion poll here. I saw Aaron is here. So Aaron's our secretary, so we'll just keep track. So this is some of the information we're going to pass along. It's in addition to like a general feeling of the meeting here. Who would be here in favor of the proposed zone change? Let me get a show of hands. Okay, we got resident of District 4. Okay, so I see two hands in favor. Who would be opposed? Okay, let's get it. And I counted 21, so 37 to 2. So that's the information we'll be passing along to the Planning Commission, who will then take who will be the next step in this process. Those meetings have not been scheduled yet, so if you follow our neighborhood groups, we'll get that out in the future for when those meetings are. The question, if the neighborhood can request a follow-up information meeting, I don't think that we can. I mean, we could ask the property owner and the developer to come back, and they might or they might not.
Yeah,
Can
the
those
developer
Can those on
has to,
Zoom be counted as well?
yes, those on Zoom, I do have record of that. And so we will include those. Pleasant View Representative Lynn Sorensen says that no one she has spoken to in the Pleasant View neighborhood is for this project. As far as the developer coming to additional meetings, they only have to come to one. We can always ask, but they don't have to. There's nothing in the code that says developers must go to neighborhood meetings.
And is the code that it's only a half an hour?
Did you have something else?
I think we got the point that everyone was against the project. So I don't, and so the most important thing is to, the most important thing is to make sure you tell the Planning Commission and the City Council what you want, because they decide. This is purely an informational meeting where we tell the planners to write in a staff report what our feeling was. We have no deciding value. We have no vote in this as a neighborhood, but we can influence those who do vote.
We'll have one quick comment here.
It's not a comment. The neighborhood district code provides for motions to be made in a neighborhood meeting. There are two motions that I wish to make.
Is that correct? I think they can only be made by people who are on the council.
No, it says residents of the neighborhood may make a motion. And when that motion is made, then members of the board vote not as the board, but as residents. You can look in 22950. I'm just saying I would propose to make two motions. I'm just waiting for the chair.
I'm gonna have to get a confirmation from our staff.
Section is that, Paul? What subsection is that?
It's in the subsection 22950.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything about motions on this.
In the middle of the paragraph. I'll read it for you if you want.
Yeah, which one? Is it subsection 6, 7?
Let me pull it up on the phone again.
Okay. Let's see. Because I see that executive board members, let's see. Let's see. So it says recommendations of the residents of a neighborhood district
Recommendations is
must be
subsection
changed
6.
by means of motions adopted by a majority vote of the residents present at the meeting.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, and then executive board members may vote on such motions, but vote simply as residents of the neighborhood district.
Official recommendations to the municipal council and or planning commission
Right.
may be made by residents of a neighborhood district
Mhm.
by a motion.
Right, and so it says show the number of residents that voted in favor of and in opposition to said recommendation.
Right, so I wish to propose a motion.
You don't even know what the motion is.
Is it substantially different? I don't know that.
Yes,
Is
it's substantially
it
different.
Than their.
It's
what we
absolutely
just talked
different.
about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
He
So-
used to be our neighborhood chairman before the city got rid of it.
So the first motion has to do with the general plan, which the developer mentioned. The current general plan for the property is residential. The proposal for changing the zone to campus mixed use changes the general plan. The general plan is for residential. The campus mixed use zone is not listed in the general plan adopted this year as a residential zone. It's a mixed use zone. And so the proposal or the motion is to make a recommendation to Provo City staff, to the Planning Commission, and to the council that a general plan amendment first be approved before changing the zone or considering the zone. So in the general plan, the campus mixed use zone is a mixed use zone. Currently, it's a residential zone and under an R or residential general plan use. There needs to be a change in the general plan, or as the developer called it, the master plan. So the proposal is that we forward as a neighborhood to Provo City staff, to the Planning Commission, and to the Municipal Council that before a zoning change is considered, to first approve a change in the general plan.
Okay, anybody, if you want to vote in favor of that motion?
Voting?
Yes, if you would like your vote to count for that, raise your hand. I have 14 on this side, so 23. Is there anybody oppose? Have 1, 2 opposed. Okay, so we have those numbers. Okay,
Okay, the second motion is to forward a recommendation to the Planning Commission and to the Municipal Council. And this is along the lines of comments by Councilman Hoban. And that is that before any zone change occurs, that this project, that the developer is encouraged to proffer a development agreement. Just as a quick background, the CMU zone is Timp Towers. Timp Towers is not the maximum 75 feet tall. The reason why is because the developer offered a development agreement that would keep the height at no more than 10 feet higher than the current Garden Villa apartments. And that's what was put in. And we had that development agreement that was required as part of the zoning change. So so the recommendation is to the planning commission and the municipal council that not consider any zoning change without an offered or proffered development agreement. That's a tough line to do because the city can't require a development agreement. Okay, all we can do is strongly encourage the developer that if a development agreement is offered, maybe there's a way to put together a larger consensus of support.
Okay,
So,
does anybody
so the
have
motion
any?
is to, again, I'll change it. So to the developer, to the municipal council, and to the planning commission, a development agreement would make this project go better, and please provide it. And that means you can't just not put the plans up. Got to see the plans, and they have to be what's going to be built.
Does anybody have anything else to add, or are we ready to vote? All right, who is in favor of requesting the
Eric,
develop? Yeah,
you guys can vote on this because it's non-binding. But legally, the city council cannot even hint at requiring a developer to offer a development agreement in this sort of fashion where it feels compelled or encouraged. Or so you guys are welcome to vote on that, but the council will have to dismiss it and won't be able to take it into consideration. So I would recommend, since it might put at risk our decision making as a council and give the developer legal reason to fight us as a council on a no decision or on our decision, I would recommend that this vote not happen.
okay, did everybody hear that? That our council member Hovan recommended to us that this might be seen as coercion and open us up to legal problems in the future for this kind of a motion.
I thought I made it clear that as a city, we cannot require a development agreement, but as citizens, we can say, if a development agreement was on the table, this process might go a little bit smoother.
It's not a risk worth taking. Send your comments to the council. I would avoid a vote like this, that the developer could then take to a court of law and state that the council expected to require us to do a development agreement. It's not worth the risk. I'm just saying. You truly want to eliminate your risk that this development happens, I would not take a vote on this and send that to the council. Your comments are noted, I think, and then you can send emails to the council, but it's not, I would recommend against this.
Do you still want to, do you still want to have a vote? Okay, any who was in favor of this? Well, and 8, so 20 in favor. Anybody want to be against? 1, 2. So we have 6 present who are, and 1 online against. Okay. We have the one motion to request an amendment to the master plan before a multifamily development goes in. I think that's right. Yeah. And the second was to, yes. And the second was to encourage a development agreement between the city. And they also passed. So we can send those, we'll send those recommendations to the planning commission and to the council. Okay, well, that's all we have for this item. Thanks everyone for engaging on us. I have a few more things coming up that might be of interest to you. We have a report on the noise concerns from the stadium, and I think Mel Smith here has a little bit on that.
Utah squaring off against number 1 South Carolina, 2:30 Eastern. Then at 5 Eastern, number 24 North Carolina.
We've been working on the comments that we've received from about the levels of noise coming from the BYU Stadium. Particularly, some people were complaining that the noise level was much higher than what the city ordinance allowed. So we've been in the process of gathering that information, trying to find out what has been done to record those sound levels, and we're in the process of still gathering that information. Our new city sees the chief administrative officer, Scott Henderson, just got back with me today and giving some of the information that we have asked for. So I don't know if you're familiar with the sound ordinance code, but in the city code, there's ordinances that control how loud activities and events and things can be. And those are all written in the code. I won't take time to go over that. But the one thing that's interesting to us is that there are exceptions granted for certain types of things that the mayor can actually give. And one of those exceptions has been given to BYU for their stadium. It's interesting that the typical code levels are between 70 and 80 decibels. And the letter that I have here for one of the games that an exception was granted to was for the noise level at 105 decibels, which is quite a bit over what the typical amount is. So that was the noise level exception that was granted. So in other words, that the exception says you can go up to 105 decibels. Okay.
That would be on any neighboring property.
Yeah. So actually what happened is that the police department did some recording, and I have the results here. It's quite kind of interesting. Let's see. I find the right sheet here. Well, it's here somewhere. I think this is it. Okay, here we go. I found it. All right. So the police did a recording on 500 East University Parkway during a game. The decibel level was 68. So that was actually well under the exception. And they did several others. But within the stadium, they recorded it. And it's interesting that at one touchdown, it was 100 decibels. Another one, 102. Another one 100, another one 106. And there was a reading at the last, the stadium did, I guess, if there was posted up on the board that said it was 130. So that was quite a bit more. The police officer said at halftime, they moved into the stadium and went to the top of the stadium where snipers were positioned and recorded some of those that I just read. It was interesting to me. I didn't know that there were snipers on top of the stadium that they have. The other concern I think that neighbors raised was that it wasn't just the BYU games where there were issues. Apparently, and I did not know this, but there are a lot of other events that go on besides football games at the stadium. Well, besides Stadium of Fire, and actually the Stadium of Fire fireworks in the code have actually been exempted. So we can't do anything about that, at least based on the current city code. But there are other events that go way later than a football game even, and others that turn on the big screen and have it going late at night as well. So we're looking into that as well to see if we can get more information about that. So that's currently where we are. We want to get more information about other exceptions that have been granted, and we'll try to get that information to you when we have it. So any questions?
Okay, so decibels, we're not so concerned about crowd shouting and yelling. I mean, but it's the announcers and the music that just blows us out of the neighborhood.
Yeah, that was one of the complaints that we heard, and we want to find out what the decibel level of those are as well to make sure that they're under city code. And then I'm not sure we can do anything other than that, the noise level. So yes.
A decibel level isn't really necessary to cause irritation. You can lie in your bed and hear your sink drip. You'll never get a decibel level off of it, but it will drive you nuts. And I think that's what's happening in the neighborhoods. We hear these things, and yeah, I mean, you're not going to get the high levels that the city says we can have. You're just not going to get it. But there are certain things that are certainly irritating. They go on and on and on.
Thanks for your comment. We're not sure exactly what we can do about that, but we'll certainly look into the possibilities of that kind of irritation.
So we do have a form set up. If you have the capabilities and record stuff over the levels, send it in on we have a link on our neighborhood page. If you feel like you have a specific incident you want us to look into further. Okay, I think you took my agenda there.
Did I steal your agenda?
Well, we have a few other items we wanted to follow up on. We talked about this Carterville path area as a future neighborhood project, and it's still in the works. We're working with the property owners and the parks people. I don't think there was a specific update on that. Aaron looks like he left. Oh, do you have anything particular to tell us?
The owner of the property, which owns the property down below where Walmart is and the surrounding businesses, is in communication with the city engineer, and they're discussing what they might do. The hope is that the property owner will deed a small sliver to the city so that the path can be constructed, and that liability will no longer be on the owner of the property. And we're not sure what's going to happen, but those discussions are ongoing.
So hopefully this is still a possibility in the future, and we're hoping it can move forward. That's next. We had kind of a report. So last year we spent, okay, let's do this. We had some complaints about this intersection on 1460 North going on to Jordan Avenue, right? Where it goes around the corner of some people getting almost hit there. And we were able to work with the city and get these bollards installed along there to kind of smooth the flow of traffic around and make the intersection a lot safer. So thanks to the city and all the Grandview people who have been working on that project with us. And I would say that we have some more potential improvements in the future. We're looking at there too. Okay. Last year we spent some of our neighborhood funds. Oh, let's do this one. Does anybody want to give an update on the Grandview playground? Okay, let's skip this one. Yeah, this is the one I kept trying to skip forward to this. Last year we used some of our neighborhood matching funds to help buy some materials for the Light the Hill in the Grandview South neighborhood. Did you have anything you want to say about this, Mindy?
Come by and see it. Right now we have some
as of yesterday, there's some new things that are not in this photo. We have a lit Y and we have a little deer family. And we're just excited that this neighborhood project is growing.
Okay, that is great. Now, thanks for doing that, Mindy. Rachel, the next item on the agenda is Rachel and has some changes to the neighborhood program for 2024.
Okay, before I do that, oh, now Deborah put her hand down. Deborah, did you have a comment that you wanted to give? Deborah's online.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting about the online people.
Yeah, so maybe she didn't mean to put her hand up. Okay. I will go. So we're going to, let me see. Maybe this is her. No. Okay. So we did a survey of the neighborhood district board members and city staff who attend our neighborhood meetings to see how they felt like the new program was coming along. And so in September, we did our survey, and the board members said it was extremely important to them to have city staff at the meetings. But when I questioned city staff about the meetings, they said that they didn't like having meetings on Thursdays. The meetings start too late and there's too many meetings. Because keep in mind, you guys are having your meeting, but they're going to 5 times as many meetings as you're having. So,
And right, Rachel, the city employees are on a 4-day schedule. So
right.
Thursday night is
so the
their
Thursday is their Friday, and they get off work at 6, which means they're staying an extra half hour waiting for the meeting to start. And then they're staying an extra hour and a half at the meetings, and multiply that by 5. And it's a lot for them, especially the traffic manager and some of these that everyone wants to hear from. But also the board members said they wanted more training. Some of the neighborhoods wanted to move to different districts. There was a lot of people wanted 2 representatives from each neighborhood. And some people wanted the board members to go back to being elected, and then other ones liked that they were appointed. They were kind of 50-50 on that. Some board members said there's too many meetings. Other board members said they wanted meetings focused just on their neighborhood and not necessarily on the district. There was talk of allowing board members to serve consecutive terms, increasing the service hour money that we can earn, and going back to having developers notify residents of zone changes or general plan amendments, like we used to do with the old program, where they actually mailed you a notice or put a notice on your door that there was going to be a neighborhood meeting. So some of the changes that we're doing in 2024, these are policy changes, so there doesn't have to be any change in the city code. So these are already going to be implemented. Hopefully you've gotten we have the 2024 meeting schedules on this table back here. So instead of the mayor having her special meeting with each district, we're going to have one mayor's meeting for all districts together. So she just has to give the meeting one time. That's going to be January 3rd. That's going to be our big kickoff to the new year. And that's where you get to the mayor and the department heads do a presentation. And that way, you know who to go to. You're going to hear from the head of public works, hear from the head of parks. And that way you can put a name to a face so that when you have a problem, you know who to contact in the city. We're going to try this out for 2024. We're changing the district meetings to Wednesdays. And the meetings will start at 6:00 p.m. Since we're starting earlier, we will be serving a light dinner for those who attend the meetings. We're changing, instead of every 6 weeks, we're doing the meetings every quarter with optional neighborhood meetings between the district meetings. So we will meet as a district every quarter, but then maybe Pleasant View can have their own neighborhood meeting between the district meetings And that could be held on any day at any time, and it can be held in the Pleasant View neighborhood. So if you have something that just pertains to you, like maybe they want to discuss the noise at the stadium, their findings and all of that, that might be something that they could do in a neighborhood meeting. For example, the quarterly district meetings, that's where you're going to have your election for chair, vice chair, and secretary, your presentations from city staff, your land use items, and voting on matching grant projects. So anything that involves city staff or like a vote would be at a district meeting. The neighborhood meetings, that's where you brainstorm matching grant and community cleanup ideas, listen to residents' concerns, maybe discuss certain things that apply just to your neighborhood. And then this also gives you more time to have board meetings between the district meetings to decide agendas, plan neighborhood socials, where to spend budget funds like that. We're going to have 2 board member training sessions, one on January 10th and one on September 18th. This is for our neighborhood board members. The one on January 10th is going to be training with development services, public works, and parks. So then that way the board members know exactly who to go to when they have a problem and know how the process works. And so then that way we can have more success in trying to improve your communities. And our service hours, we were, getting the equivalent of $10 an hour per person. But thanks to Council Chair Catrice McKay, that has now been raised to $15 an hour per person. So that way you don't have to do quite so many service hours. And oops, let me get out of here. And then here are some proposals. These are in the code. So I will be proposing these to the city council in January. And this will be something that maybe won't go into effect until maybe 2025 or maybe the middle of 2024. And again, if you have input on this, let me know. This is where I would propose having 2 board members represent each neighborhood. And we were toying with the idea of having 1 board member be elected and 1 board member being appointed, allowing board members to serve consecutive terms, clarification on board member involvement in political or commercial activities. The code right now is very vague. We were also thinking of increasing the matching grant funds from $5,000 to $7,500. This, I had records back to the 90s. It was $5,000 back then. It hasn't increased. So we'd really like to see that. A clarification on the fee waiver process. We had a lot of questions on that. And maybe having a way of notifying having the developer, putting that back in the code for the developers to notify the public of zone changes, or some way that, I notify them, some other way of doing that. And there were some ideas. We're still toying with this idea. Pleasant View neighborhood is thinking of being with District 1 instead of District 4. So it more aligns with the council district. And University neighborhood is thinking of maybe moving to District 2 or 5. So it more aligns with District 2 would have all your BYU professors. District 5 would be your BYU students. Just kind of some ideas, but that's kind of what we're looking for, changes in the neighborhood program. If anyone has any questions on that.
They have comments on that? You have to use the microphone.
It really felt to me tonight that this was rushed for the consideration that we were brought here for, in part, this student housing development in the Pleasant View neighborhood. It was rushed. There were more comments. I wanted to ask several more questions and was told, no, we're out of time. A half hour just seemed like too little time.
Right.
If something can be done to make it possible to give us the time.
Right. Okay, let me ask your opinion. Would anything he have said change your mind so you would want that apartment building there?
So one of the issues why we're a little rushed is the staff issue that the staff has to leave. And so they're not able to help with that. So moving the meetings forward and having them on Wednesdays will potentially let us have more.
Yeah, and starting the meetings earlier would allow us to have more time. I know in the past, the meetings have sometimes lasted 2-3 hours. And I don't know, this is just my opinion. I felt like everyone here did not like the project, did not like the rezone. And we got that point. And one of the things with the neighborhood program is to encourage you to go to, we have a lot of people that go to the neighborhood meeting and then nobody goes to the planning commission or the city council meeting. And that's where the decisions are made. So everyone comes to the neighborhood meeting and they think, oh, I've done my part. This now is not going to happen. And then you say, oh, the planning commission is forcing this down my throat, but yet nobody from the neighborhood went to the planning commission meeting. So all they get is a 2-sentence blurb in their staff report saying there was a neighborhood meeting, they were against it. And so we're really encouraging people to not depend so much on the neighborhood meeting and to get them to planning commission and city council. Make your comments there, because that makes a huge difference. If, 50 people show up to planning commission, they're going to know you don't like that project. If nobody shows up, then they're going to think, oh, I guess they don't really care.
I do want to recognize Councilwoman McKay is here. Councilwoman-elect Becky Bogdan is here. Travis Hoban was here. Our other councilman-elect is here. So the council.
One thing I can tell you is that, first of all, there's a lot of times there's not a council person here. Many council people don't come to these meetings. And your email is more important than even what's said here. This will all be read and we'll all be in our packet and it'll all be presented to us. But that takes activity on a council member's part, right? They either have to come to this meeting, or if they have to read that packet, they have to read through the neighborhood stuff that happened. That takes, they have to actively do it, right? But getting an email directly from a citizen, that they're more often to read that and digest it, and it'll influence our decision. So absolutely send an email on this. And Rachel's correct. We get hardly anybody coming to planning commission or council meetings to speak. At those meetings, you can speak for 2 minutes max, but as many people as they want can speak. They can just keep going. As many as who come get to speak. But that's just my feedback as a council member for you.
Thank you. We have,
I'd like to read.
does anybody have any other comments on these proposed changes for the meetings for next year?
She wants to know when.
How do we find out when and where these meetings are?
Oh, good question. I love that question. I have on this desk right here are the schedules for 2024. Every household in Provo was sent the Rec Center magazine. On the back cover of that magazine is the schedule for 2024. Also in your utility bill, you know how there's that little newsletter in the utility bill for November and December, we'll have the meeting schedule in that utility bill. It's on the city website. It's on Facebook. It's on the screens at the rec center. If you're working out, it'll pop up saying, hey, there's a district meeting coming up. So, and we also have a newsletter. If you've written your email address on the sign-in sheet, we will send you an email right a week before the meeting telling you what's coming up, and also a week after the meeting telling you what was discussed, so you can keep in touch that way. But yes, make sure to grab a schedule. They're right here on the table for 2024.
Okay, thank you. And I believe.
Do you mean when the this item we talked about is going to city council? Sorry, I misunderstood you. So that has not been scheduled yet. So when that is scheduled, I always put a notice on the Facebook group saying, on the District 4 Facebook, it'll say, hey, you have a planning commission meeting where they're going to discuss this on this day at this time. If you're not on Facebook, again, try to be on the newsletter. If you do email, put your email on, and then you'll get a notice. We'll send that out too. Just send notice on that.
Is Mr. Davis the one that will send it to us? No?
Rachel Green sends out all these.
Oh, it'll come from the city.
Do you mean Mr. Evans? Evans, he probably will. If you get the emails from Paul Evans, I'm sure he will send that to you.
Okay. Do we have a few minutes left we can have for some more public comment? Yeah.
Mr. Jacobs here is a resident of
Garden Villa.
Garden Villa, and he has respected the agenda and waited clear until the end for public comment on the development that we talked about earlier. I feel like we owe him that courtesy to have him read the statement that he wanted to read.
Can I put it up here?
Yeah.
Easier to stand up. I'm an old guy.
Oh, you can't. No, we can hold it for you though.
Can you do that? Now, if y'all want to go home, fine. I've been waiting for an hour and a half to make a statement. I wanted to make a personal, what happens with this monster project to individuals. And here's what I said. I wanted to make a description of where we lived in Garden Villa. This happy, quiet neighborhood runs from 200 North Canyon Road to 22 North Canyon Road, east to 335 East. Garden Villa, it contains 32 single-family homes. This segment of our area. Apartments and condos in Garden Villa, reported the oldest existing condo in Utah County. Some current residents have purposely lived in this neighborhood for generations. Long or short-term residents find Garden Villa a pleasant and economical place to live. Incidentally, because of the many advantages of this neighborhood, home prices have risen consistently. I think my own family is illustrative. A lifelong resident of Ogden, faced with 5 children who were or planned on attending BYU, Dad decided to retire early and move to Provo. Garden Villa was brand new, 1965, and they bought their condo in 69. During a consecutive 17-year period, all 5 children graduated from BYU, 2 with master's degrees. When the folks passed away, we, my wife and I, bought their condo in 1999. After Kay and I, living in 4 foreign countries in 14 years, as we served our country in the church, and me working in 30 foreign countries, we returned to Provo. We could have gone anywhere. That's where we met. That had something to do with it. And Dad and Mom were here. We bought our condo, moved back to our condo. We called it, quote, our next to the last resting place. And in a few short years, our children, one of our 5 children will own it. 65 years in our chosen neighborhood with the condo amenities and advantage has been a happy time for the Jacobs. So many of us in Garden Villa have a constant flow of friends and families, yet no confusion because of adequate parking, which is going to be a tremendous problem with this proposed program. Our neighborhood, and I think that goes for the vast majority of those who are here tonight against the project. Our neighborhood is very close to virtually all amenities, eating out, shopping, healthcare, entertainment. It's a quiet area. We're 7 to 10 minutes from all the major BYU campus venues and 20 from UVU. Frequently, we turn out, we in Gordon Villa, my wife and I turn out into Canyon Road, lightly traveled, and we look both ways and there's nobody there. Happened yesterday and today. Yet we have a major artery immediately to the north of us and only 1 block away from University Avenue on the west. All this would immediately change if Reynolds Asset Management LLC were to get its zoning change. I'm a firm believer in our capitalist system. Their investors would make a lot of money. Devin Durant undoubtedly sold his hill for a nice amount. And guess what he did with it? He moved to a quiet area in Rexburg, Idaho. Taxes would accrue to the city with this big, huge development. Unfortunately, it would be to our individual and neighborhood expense. No thanks. There is no reason in the world to justify this monster construction project to ruin our peaceful neighborhood. Short term, it would generate terrible dust and traffic burdens during months of construction. And then with grossly inadequate parking, unleash its 404 resident students and their parents and visitor vehicles onto less than 2 miles of surface roads. You know, what I read is that they didn't have a single parking place for visitors. You got 404 BYU students up there and they don't get any visitors. Where they're going to park? Well, we know, don't we? LLC, please spare yourself from our neighbors' tenacious and unbending opposition and find another location for your proposed construction. Good luck. Get on the, thank you for waiting. I had to read it so it'd be in the record.
Can somebody from the district forward this good letter to the city council and the planning or zoning commission? I think this is perfect. This ought to go forward.
Well, this is one guy. My wife and I met when there were 7,000 students at BYU. We know BYU's got a cap on. This is a ridiculous time to put in a project for 404 students in a place that's guaranteed. I mean, it is a neighborhood, and it's been a neighborhood, and why shouldn't it stay that way?
Thank you. Do we have any other? We're right up against the buzzer. I think we're gonna have to call it a meeting for tonight, but thank you everyone for coming out and participating in the process. Thank you.